Thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate the time that you're allowing us to come into your home and to your personal space. My name is Jazz Grace Sadler. I happen to be the founder of FSP Against Bullying, but joining me tonight is two very special guest speakers. So tonight is all around elevating voices of our essential workers, but there's going to be a tie-in to those voices as it relates to adult bullying, whether it's in the workspace or in the academic arena or in the medical arena. So without further ado, I want to ask Dominique Revere to introduce herself and give you a very brief bio. Then we're going to move over to Katrina Kelly, and then we're going to get right on to tonight's program. Dominique, please.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to getting into the workshop and having some really engaging conversations. So a little bit about me. My name is, again, as Jazz said, Dominique Revere. I am an educator, an advocate, and I do a lot of work in the DE&I space. So this year has been one of many hurdles, but really many breakthroughs for me. So I'm really excited about having the opportunity to just share my story, share how and where I can be a resource and support for not only this network, but also, networks of networks, right? So just really eager and excited to get started. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Dominique. Now I'm going to turn to Katrina Kelly that comes from the healthcare field. Katrina, please introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to join you all tonight. I'm looking forward to our discussions and your questions. A little bit about myself. I'm a registered nurse. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I am currently, I'm not working at the bedside right now, but the emergency department is my area of specialty. I've been a nurse for about 13 years, and right now I am in nursing education and professional development. So my role, more so right now, is to support the nurses at the bedside, make sure they are competent to deliver great care during such a challenging time. And again, I'm looking forward just to having a great discussion with you all.
Beautiful. So you've joined this particular workshop and I welcome you. And oftentimes when you hear terms like bullying or bullying prevention, you think about children, adolescents. But one of the things since we've been running our foundation that we've found is that bullying in the workplace, bullying in the adult space is pervasive. And we recognize based on a number of the calls and the data that supports it, that it actually has become a public health problem. No different than any other pandemic. It is a public health problem here in the United States and around the globe. During the month of October, we celebrate something called, or we recognize or raise awareness to something called Bullying Prevention Month, and that's in the month of October. Some data came across my desk citing 31% of adults in America had shared the fact that they had been and experienced direct bullying. And that's various forms of bullying. And I thought 31%, that number is almost as high as adolescent bullying. So as you can imagine right now with parents trying to homeschool, support remote learning for their children, also remote working throughout the year of 2020. I want to turn the attention to this problem by hearing directly from some of the voices that are in the field that are directly impacted by being essential workers and what are they seeing in their spaces. Keep in mind, when we think about essential workers, we're talking about across the spectrum. We're talking about the fact that we can look at the internet and we can see people harassing our day-to-day workers that are trying to support us. Those are the people that are in your retail stores. Those could be people in the healthcare field, our nurses and our doctors. Those are our educators that are supporting us through this new normal or whatever that could possibly look like. So they've been affected by forms of microaggressions and all kinds of overt aggressions throughout the 2020 and leading into 21. So we're going to talk a bit about that with some of our speakers tonight. And then we also want to turn to your voices. We want to hear what some of your experiences has been as well. So it's not just about us. So right now, what I want to do is turn over some statements. I want to hear from Dominique to tell us about some of her experiences as an educator and someone that works in the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And what does that look like, particularly as it relates to the current civil unrest? Dominique.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good way to jump off, right? And I guess what I should say too is that a lot of my experience is in the human resources space, right? So I have probably about 16 or 17 years in the human resources space, working with different executives and really kind of forging ahead in the leadership development space and really helping to cultivate those relationships. So over the summertime, and in my experience, right, I too have experienced some of these microaggressions that you talk about. There was a light bulb that went off for me. And in doing so, I made the transition over to education. So now I actually teach high school and I am their consultant for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is a all girls private Catholic school, predominantly white. So going into this space, I knew that there would be an uphill battle, right? There's nobody that looks like me. There's nobody that understands or has the experience, but I could value the fact that we have educators that want to come alongside and understand and empathize and really want to be called out on some of the things that we call unbiased consciences, right? Because I think that we all have it and it's something that we have to recognize. So what we have actively started doing in our school is really starting to create the capacity to have the difficult conversations. So it's really about checking ourselves at the door and understanding what our shortcomings or what our biases may be and our level of comfort, and really being able to meet students where they are. One of the things that I have found, however, is that in this type of environment, when the real world comes in, right? So now my bubble shrinks a little bit, and now I have to look at what's actually happening outside of these walls. It really strikes people either in a wrong way or people are really passionate about it one way or the other. Either way, I think that what it is about is, again, creating space, meeting people where they are, understanding that some people's minds you cannot change, but those that are willing, open, and able to have the conversation, being able to take up space for not only them, but also yourself. And more than anything else, take care of yourself, right? Being sure that we're checking in with ourselves and that we're not like overextending ourselves, especially from an education perspective where there are these topics that are hitting home and very personal to us. This time has also allowed me to understand that, I think in our minds, we always say, well, you have to keep your personal and professional life separate. Well, my personal life is my profession, right? Like it is who I am. And if I choose to show up authentically, right, because that's what I'm teaching these students, then I too have to mirror that for them. And that means going to school and saying, hey, you know what, today we're not going to learn anything. Right. Today, we just need to be in this space with one another. And what is it that you want to talk about? What's on your mind? What's on your heart? Because those are the conversations that are really getting the most traction. And sometimes we just have to veer off whatever that planned activity may have been. So that's really where I'm seeing it in this time, in this space. Again, there's been some really big hurdles, but I think that we've had some great breakthroughs too, that I don't know would have presented themselves had there been other circumstances.
Okay. Well, I want to turn a question to Katrina at this point. Now, Katrina, you work at a medical center in Ohio, and recognizing you're not necessarily in the emergency room, you feel the effects of what's going on in the emergency room. You guys are swamped. You're getting slammed at every direction imaginable. Some of the anxiety around what you're involved in, particularly in the middle, in the crust of a global pandemic. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think, currently it's very challenging for all healthcare providers right now. It's challenging for our patients, our community. But what's really important is that I can assure you that many of the healthcare team, they're there to support you. They do their very best in all that they do, to have the best patient outcomes. Although they are working tirelessly, there's no other place that they'd rather be. This is what many of us are called to do. This is why we joined the profession that we do. And yes, it's very challenging. I'm sure, many of us have never experienced anything to this magnitude. Um, you know, Seeing death on a daily basis, seeing families, ripped apart. Um, Being separated from your own family has challenges too with the pandemic. But one thing I can say for certain is that everybody is, doing their very best, and they're just really looking out for the community. It is very challenging, but know again that this is what we're called to do. This is what we love. So even though we have a little hurdle right now, a little roadblock, there's nothing that the healthcare team won't do to ensure that they are giving you the best care. Um,
Okay.
and
So,
I would say that is across the board, nationwide. We don't get into this for the money. We get into it because we love to serve other people, and in the best way that we know how, which is providing care.
so staying with the fact that we've had, more than 9 months of really trying to figure out what's going on with the pandemic, the count in terms of the number of even particularly Americans that have had death due to complications with COVID-19, the coronavirus. Vaccine, talk a little bit about what that new introduced anxiety has meant in your field. Katrina, I want to stay with you for a minute.
Okay. I would say with the vaccine, I think for some people there's a lot of hesitation. It just depends on your background and the information that you've been accustomed to. But relatively, I still need to do more research on it myself. I will be eligible in the next coming weeks to get it, and I just like to make an informed decision with anything that I do. I think from what I'm hearing, that the vaccine is safe, that it has been trialed and tested, minimal complications. But again, because everything was done so quickly, but again, with science and now many of these advances that we have, you know, they go through the rigorous process to make sure that these vaccines are safe for people. I would say that, with the vaccine, you see that there's a lot of hesitation too, among the underrepresented patient population. There's a lot of hesitation just due to maybe some things that have happened in the past, and so it may take a little bit more reaching out to those communities, to really make sure that they feel comfortable, that they have the necessary information to make an informed decision. Again, you know, I think that the very basic things that we can all do is, maintain social distancing, keep it to your minimal, your family that you live with, and not going outside of that. Wearing your mask at all times. I know my niece and nephew, they probably think I'm losing it a bit, but we wear our mask in the house. There was a point in time at a daycare where I would pick them up and they didn't have it on. Mm-mm. We have to put that mask on. That's my comfort level, and I know that I just want to make sure that they're safe, that I'm safe, that we don't take anything to my family, who can help me with them. So I might go a little bit overboard, but the basic things that we can do to prevent, spreading infection and limiting coronavirus's toll on the nation, on our families. I think that is probably one of the best things that we can do at this time.
So for you both as essential workers, and goodness knows I could never imagine what it's like to really walk in your space and appreciate everything that you do. Looking at how America perceives our essential workers, particularly our educators and our healthcare providers, it's almost as though some people are saying like, oh, it's their fault. Why aren't they doing more? Why aren't my children able to get back in the classroom? Why aren't my educators better equipped to deal with remote learning for my children? So I want to turn to you, Dominique, now, understanding that the average, particularly teacher in the public school system, was ill-equipped to deal with remote learning. And for that reason, even though it starts at the administration level in terms of not having what educators and the students need, the teachers have taken the hit. Talk a little bit about that particular scenario.
Sure. Yeah, it's almost as if, it's everything and not enough, right? So again, a lot of it is about meeting people where they are. And I think to your point, I mean, think about it. Who was Zooming a year and a half ago? Like, what was a Zoom, right?
Mhm.
So now it is in all of our daily interactions. This is how we communicate in order to stay connected to one another. So in the educational sector, it is about also trying to have different lessons that resonate with people differently. And when you don't have that connecting point, right? When you don't have the opportunity to be in front of that child, sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle, right? But what I will say is that from my experience and the educators that I work with and the educators that my children interact with, everybody is doing the best that they can with what they know
Mhm.
and what they can right now. And what we are looking for is some additional support, from parents, right? From students. Let me know what you need. Meet me too where I am so that I can give you the tools and resources in order to be successful. Again, I think that we too have in our minds that this is what the curriculum is supposed to be, and this is what you're supposed to learn this year. And I think that we also, in this new normal, have to really take a step back and understand from an educational standpoint what resonates best with the student. Sometimes not getting through that lesson is okay. Sometimes just checking in on their mental health, their emotional well-being. How are you dealing with stress and the anxiety of not seeing your friends every day or not having that connection with your teacher? Your parents may be, again, essential workers, so you don't have that touch point with them on a daily too, right? So I'm feeling isolated. How are you as a student also dealing with that? So I think that from an educational perspective, we've had to pivot a little bit, and some of those conversations that weren't being had before, we're being called to the carpet and really in a place of responsibility that we have to first handle that piece and have those conversations before we can really get fully enthralled into any type of like academic lesson that's happening.
Absolutely. One of the things we do here at FSP Against Bullying is we act as a resource for families and individuals who have been affected by bullying. And now with stay-at-home requirements, oftentimes the youth as well as adults are sheltered at home with their bully. We've found that the increased calls of incidents have gone up. From an educator's perspective, we understand that if you are engaging students remotely, it's difficult to identify if a youth is being physically or emotionally affected by bullying. It's easier to mask it when you're doing the remote interaction. But when you're also a healthcare provider, typically we rely on our healthcare providers to know when there are incidents that may be affecting patients that come into the hospital. So this is a question for both of you, and I will start with Katrina. When are you seeing or do you understand whether or not there is an escalation in abuse, not just bullying, but domestic and intimate partner violence? What are you guys seeing there in your hospital environment, Katrina?
Okay, so I could speak. I would say probably nationally, though, not just within Cleveland, Ohio. I would say nationally, with the quarantine, especially earlier in the year, and people staying at home more often, there was an increase in domestic violence, uh, intimate partner violence. There was an increase. Hospitals were starting to see increase in patients coming in with, complaints of assaults or domestic violence situations. So it is very prevalent. It's something that, unlike, before COVID and the quarantine and being isolated at home, we weren't. So you have more outlets, you have more outlets to reach people. You weren't in the house all the time. And then often, because of COVID, you have people who are in the house with their perpetrator. And and they're doing their best to kind of eliminate or get away from the situation. But again, when you have limited things open, and limited safety nets, and then you can't go over certain people's houses because you don't know if they have the coronavirus or just the social distancing measures, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And so I do know that that was recognized as an increase in many counties, many agencies, just increasing awareness, but also providing those resources like what is available to you during the pandemic should you be experiencing this. I know our local, many of the healthcare teams, so the social workers, the case managers, the nonprofit agencies that help, they have been a huge resource for patients experiencing that during this time. Just to notify, what's available, what are options, so that we can remove you or help you get out of that situation.
So when we talk about removing people from dangerous environments, and just like you mentioned, most things are closed. It realistically, is there somewhere to remove people to,
Right.
or the shelters, stretch beyond their bandwidth on a national level? That goes without saying. I would imagine that's so. But what are some of the things that we can do that you would recommend to protect ourselves if we're in situations like that?
That's a good question. Honestly, you know, I've never been in a domestic violence situation, so I can't speak to what that person, the victim may experience. I can only speak to my perspective as a nurse and what I see coming in, and maybe some strategies that they could do to, reduce occurrences or to help themselves get out of that situation. So I would encourage, if at all possible, let someone know what's going on. Make a plan, make a safety plan, if at all possible. Um, you know, Maybe have you a stash of money, if at all possible, somewhere, so that if you quickly needed to get out of the situation, but still needed to have access, um, you know, have it. Fi- Find somewhere, store it somewhere. And if a situation arises when you need to remove yourself, I would make sure that I grab that. Write down important numbers. Maybe have a stash bag where you don't have to worry about looking through this and looking through that to get what you may need. If you can, grab it and go. Also notify your local authorities, because I'm certain that they have contacts who can point you in the right direction to get assistance. Hospitals are always safety nets, your local fire station. They can't leave you out in the cold. They can't leave you out in the cold. So, we are helping organizations and people. And so our job is to help someone if they are in need, whether that be taking you to the hospital so that you can work with a social worker, or they can at least get you in touch and, know of the many agencies that may be open and what's going on now due to Corona. But I would say, if at all possible, make sure you let someone know what's going on. Have your emergency numbers, and utilize the public safety net that we have, the police, the fire stations, the hospitals, to get help and assistance.
Yeah, Jess, the one thing that I'll add to that, and
We have a
my
question.
situation is a
Go
little
ahead.
bit different from like the educational perspective. So I think all of those are really like heavy hitters. But the thing that we're seeing too from an educator's perspective is that you're seeing more bullying through the internet, right? So this idea of cyberbullying and really not now having anywhere to go or anywhere to turn. So I think to Katrina's point, it is about making sure that we're informing those people that we see as a safety net, that we see as a blanket, and really having the opportunity to have those conversations, and not suffer in silence, right? So many times we see that I don't think that I have, or nobody's going to believe me, but really making certain that those conversations are documented, right? If it's coming through my DMs, am I in a place where I can screenshot it, where I can actually print out those conversations, so that when I have that conversation with the teacher, or I have that conversation with my parent, then I now too have that evidence to show that this is happening and this is my experience. Because I think that so many times we talk about from a child's perspective, oh, they're resilient, bullying just happens, that's what's supposed to happen, right? These are your, you know, kind of things that happen in this space, and you'll be fine, it'll make you a better person. But I think that what we fail to realize is that in the middle school and high school space, from my experience, guidance counselors are not there to help to fix those things, right? And it is a parent's responsibility, it's the teacher's responsibility to actually take that youth, or take those youth under your wing, and find resources in order to help that person. Because what we know is that that trauma now manifests other ways in life, right? So we have married people that are often living these wonderful lives, and then they have a trigger, and it's like PTSD, and it takes us back to our youth. So it's one of those things that when it happens, we have to address it real time. And I'll say, as a parent, you know, it can be very, very difficult to find some of those resources, but through organizations like FSP, through organizations like Robin's Nest, you have a network of people that really want your child to be in a good place, to flourish, to thrive, to grow, and feel safe, because that's what it's all about. More so now than ever, but anytime, right? It's about our young people feeling safe and being in spaces where they can thrive and really be the best versions of themselves.
Okay, I'd like to move over to some of the questions that are coming in via our Facebook Live. And thank you, Meg, for your question. From Meg, she wants to know, how can the public better support teachers and also healthcare workers? If there are any suggestions that you have, let's go back to you, Katrina.
Okay, thank you for that question. I would absolutely say that the public can help assist the healthcare team by, maintaining social distancing, wearing your mask out in public. It's a very small thing to do that can make, a big difference. I would say being mindful of hand washing and just simple infection prevention things that you can do. So washing your hands before and after you eat. And unfortunately, I do have to say this, but washing your hands before, after you go to the restroom, because sometimes we have adults and even children have habits. And so, just some of those simple things, even, before you go to the grocery store, in and out of different spaces, washing our hands. I would think, being mindful too, if you think that you may potentially have COVID, they're not encouraging people, if you want to get tested, they're not encouraging you to go to the hospital to get tested, but actually go to the sites that they have identified to actually get tests. I would also say that, just be mindful of anyone coming over your house, your children, family, friends, public spaces, out to eat. It's been a while. I haven't gone out. I do a little bit, but I try to make sure I'm like in the corner, where not too many people are around, because I won't let my mask down until my food comes. I don't know if I'm being a little bit more, if it's more awareness, or if it's just maybe I'm becoming a little anxious over this, because you just don't know how you might catch it. So I think those are some of the things in which the public can do to help.
Okay. I'm going to turn to you in terms of an educator. What can the public do? And you spoke about the cyberbullying piece. I want to zero right in on that, because I would imagine that, and I know we have the data that supports that cyberbullying, it was always from the emotional, the physical, and the cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is number one. And now cyberbullying seems to be the standalone form of bullying through this pandemic. So talk a little bit about how the public can support educators and themselves as parents and guardians around the cyberbullying piece.
Yeah, so I
Turning
think
you,
that part of
Dominique,
it
with
is
that.
when you see something, say something.
Mhm.
Right? So I think that there are signs, right? We have to check in with our children. We have to check in with the young people around us. So when we see something, say something. Not only that, but I think in this day and age, we're so numb to the things that we see on our feed. So while it may be something that may be alarming, we're quick to just swipe to the next thing. Seen that before, swipe to the next
Mhm.
thing. But I would say slow down and really consume what that content is, right? And
Mhm.
really be able to kind of peel back some of the layers of that onion. Is it something alarming? Is it something that needs to be reported? And err on the side of caution. It may not be something that under normal circumstances we would think is a big deal, but understanding that these young people are really held captive, right, in their
Mhm.
homes. These predators on the internet have this captive audience. They're consuming this content all the time, right? It is going beyond what our celebrities are doing. It is people right in our backyard, right? People that we go to school with, because we know behind the keyboard people feel safe. So
Mhm.
I would say definitely, if you see something, say something, call it out. If that means that we need to reach out to a principal, we need to reach out to the head of school to say, hey, this is alarming. This is something that we may need to look into. Definitely err on the side of caution. From an educator's perspective, I would say extend grace, right? So we too are in this with you. As much as you want your children to go back to school 5 days a week, we want to see them 5 days, right? I know for myself, I'm seeing my students one time a week for 80 minutes. If you know anything about kids, they are not retaining the information past that 20-minute mark, right? So we too are in this very, difficult space, right? And we're just really trying to make the best of it. So I would say lead with empathy and extend grace. If there's something that you need done differently for your child, please let us know. I know for myself and a lot of my educator friends, we're working from 7 a.m. until well past 10, right? Because we want to make sure that we're checking in with the parents, that we're having
Mhm.
those individual conversations with students. And me, myself, as a new teacher, I've got to get to learn all the ins and outs, not only of the culture, but also what makes you tick. So if you can help me to really educate myself and familiarize myself with the needs of your child and your family, that's helpful. But extend grace, right? Meet me where I am and understand that we're all in it together, because this is a team effort.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we have a question from Mindy on Facebook, and she wants to know if any one of the speakers faced bullying during the pandemic, and what we share the story. So I'm going to share a couple stories because I have two adult children who are essential workers. And first, I'll share a story about my son who actually worked for UPS. And that was a very short-lived situation. He went through a considerable amount of training for the UPS packaging area, and all of it was around safety, washing your hands, wearing your mask, etc. And once he got through the corporate training piece, when he's in the warehouse, he found that very few people adhere to that requirement. And when he brought it up to his supervisor, he got crap duty. He continued to be given unreasonable work assignments from late night to morning. All of a sudden, the temperament completely changed. So that's a form of bullying in the workplace, where now you're being alienated. Coworkers don't want to talk to you. You could possibly be a mole. You're the only one that's complaining. So at that particular point, when there's things happening in the workplace that is unacceptable and someone speaks up about it, they become a target. So he was fortunately my son, and I said, you don't have to deal with that. You have options, you can leave, but that's not the case for everyone. It
Right.
absolutely is not the case for everyone that they have an outlet, someplace to go when it happens in the workplace. So yeah, that did happen. And he landed on his feet very fortunately. My daughter is actually a dental assistant and adult, obviously, and she found herself again, workplace bullying. During the pandemic, we want to put the brown girl to deal with the difficult patients who are either physically chastising them. It was a repeated situation where the brown girl can handle it, or let's make sure that, you know, we give the less desirable duties to her. She saw that change had elevated during the pandemic, because unfortunately there seems to be a perception that if you're black or brown, that you in terms of being conscientious about your health and welfare may not be the same. So we saw that, we felt that repeatedly. So Mindy, I hope that answers your question. How do we handle the situation? Good question. I'm the big sister, I'm big mama. And again, I strongly encouraged her to separate herself from that particular employer. Again, I want to remind you, not everyone has that. That's a luxury where you have a parent saying, I'm going to, you know, assist you with your rent, or, you know, you can come shopping in my pantry, those
Yeah, I
kinds
got
of
you,
things.
right?
The majority of America doesn't have that as a luxury to be able to do that. So those situations are very trying, they're very difficult, they're unnecessary, but a lot of that had to do with converging your anxieties, converging your fears, and isolating it in, or uh, visiting yourself on minorities as if they were dispendable. I'll say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think, Jazz, to your point, it's about us too checking in with ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, especially in the example with your daughter, not only is it that Black and brown people don't value their health, but I think that sometimes there's the notion that Black women can take on more.
Ooh,
You're
yes.
strong. You got that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You're good. Right. So I think that where
Exactly.
we need the
Hmm.
support, not only from each other, but then also our white counterparts, is to say, but is that something that you can handle? Hey, I see that you're doing a lot. Hey, there's a lot going on, right? Because not only are we, again, dealing with the pandemic, but we're also dealing with another pandemic, right? That as Black and
Yeah.
brown people, we haven't been able to shy away from. We haven't been able to say, hey, well, that's them, right? Because this is us. These are our nephews, our sons, our husbands, right? People that we value in our lives. And I think, again, when we talk about hurdles and some breakthroughs, you know, one of kind of the aha moments this summer is now we had a captive audience to
Mhm.
really say, hold on, this is a problem, right? We can no longer try to cast away how you feel or your experience, but try to better understand where you're coming from, how I can help you. And that, again, is where, you know, Remedy stemmed from, and really why I decided to leave corporate, because who I am, right? And the work that I do is in every thread of my being. And if I don't feel like I can be in a safe place, right, and show up as I fully, wholly am, and feel supported in that space, then it's time for me to move on. And again, to your point, I don't have the luxury of mom saying, "Hey, I got you, girl. Hey, come here," right? And then I've got two little people. So it does take a great amount of courage to say, this isn't for me, right? This space no longer serves me. You're not seeing me. You're not valuing me, what I'm bringing to the table. And thus I need to take my talents elsewhere.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. I now want to turn to Linda on Facebook. She indicated she watched someone be berated behind the counter at 7-Eleven, and she didn't know what to do because they didn't want to follow the rules, etc.
Mhm.
They didn't want to wear the mask, and she didn't know how to handle that type of situation. So she wants to know what some of the recommendation would be. I will jump in and say, first of all, don't put yourself at risk.
Correct.
But you see something, say something, and there are different ways you can say something. If you have a mobile phone, you can discreetly videotape the situation. You have 911 on your phone. You can put it on, once you call 911 and put it on speakerphone, and they will hear the altercation. They can track your cell phone. And you can say things discreetly like, we all come to this 7-Eleven right here on Ross Boulevard. Why are you doing this? We all need to shop here. And without alerting the individual that you're really speaking to someone on the phone to let them know the location of the incident. There are a number of ways that you can support someone that is being intimidated or at risk based on those kinds of behavior. We've seen how cell phones have been our allies. They've been our enemies too sometimes, but we also have seen how they've been our allies in a number of incidents in terms of documenting unlawful behavior. So that's one of the things that you can consider. Anybody else want to weigh in on that on the panel?
I actually had a situation a few months ago when they made the mask mandate for you to go into shops and stores and things like that. And I was at a Speedway, and a gentleman walked in as he would every day, I guess. But this time he didn't put the mask on. And one of the workers actually mentioned something and said, "Hey, sir, we need you to come in with a mask on. So, please go to your car and get one." And all I know is he started yelling and like stormed out, like yelled at her. And she said, "Sir, the sign is on the wall, it's on the door." But he got so aggressive. And I know I stopped what I was doing and I just kind of came around to peek to see what was going on. And I don't know if that's that natural instinct in me. I know I should probably run the other way, but I don't. I like go to it and just kind of investigate. And I'm just watching it because I felt for the lady's safety, to be honest with you. I felt for her safety. Gentleman became so irate and upset about, following the organization's rule, just putting the mask on. So again, like Jazz said, you can be discreet with it. Maybe potentially leave outside of the building if you are that concerned, or put yourself on the opposite side of the building or where the situation is occurring. I know one thing in healthcare, especially when we're dealing with patients or family members who become angry and kind of unpredictable, you always want to make sure you have at least your foot between, the patient and the door. You never want to be caught in a corner where you can't escape if you ever needed to. And so, I think I take that training that I learned, and just as being an emergency department nurse, I won't go in the corner of a room. I have to make sure that I identify where all the exits are before when I walk into a place. I look just to know, even like when I get on a plane. I haven't been on one in a while. I'm looking forward to it, maybe this year, fingers crossed. But even when I get on the plane, I'm always looking to see before the stewardess, is pointing toward the exit signs. I'm already looking to see, okay, where am I sitting? So if something was to happen, where am I going? So maybe, something like that could be helpful. I'm not certain that actually speaking up and saying something, unless it's like this person is at risk, is one of the greatest things to do, only because you just don't know people's mindset right now. And everybody is very emotionally charged. And you just, you want to keep yourself safe and also keep that person. So maybe pulling out that phone, record it, or just make sure that you have a quick exit.
Absolutely. I want to stay with you, Katrina. We have a question from Lorraine Simpson. Awesome question, Lorraine. She wants to know, what is it your hospital has done to support the medical staff, particularly everyone that's overworked, exhausted, and you're committed to helping the patients. Like, is the hospital supporting you guys? Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they are. And I was, I know I'm speaking currently about where I work, but, when you're in healthcare and currently going through this pandemic, every organization is recognizing their nurses and their healthcare team and providing for. I know we've had We've increased like our employee assistance initiatives and programs, and we've gotten an app. It's called Headspace, where you can like just go on your phone, sit back a minute, and listen to some meditation, which is free. We've had virtual exercise trainings. We've had, you know, little snacks to keep your energy going. We've had our pastoral care department provided supportive services for the healthcare team, and I mean, really, everybody has been very supportive to everyone. And you know, when you work in healthcare, it is a team environment. Honestly, one discipline can't do anything without the other. And so you have to collaborate, you have to work together. And naturally, when you work together with this team on some of the probably worst case scenarios that you could ever see, whether it's COVID or not COVID, especially, you know, if you're working in a trauma center, you see so much. And all you have is your team to depend on and to support each other. So I think, you know, now more than ever, the healthcare team and professionals are supporting one another. You know, we're aware of so how you doing today. You know, I think everyone too across the nation has a heightened sense of awareness of the importance of mental health. You know, not just, you know, you seem happy because a lot of things have been taken from people. So how else can you you know, find respite or just find solitude in what's going on, or even just gratefulness, you know, just waking up in the morning, just being grateful that you have a breath, and today is not your day, you know, for you to test positive for COVID and then have that anxiety. And so I think honestly, just across the board, I think the team, healthcare providers, no matter whether you're in the States or internationally, I think that we are all there to support one another, because that's all you have really at the end of the day.
And I think you beautifully segued into the second part of her question is, what are you actually doing to maintain your wellness?
Mm,
You know, physically, mentally, and otherwise. You talked about the meditation
right.
that's available,
Hmm.
spiritual support, et cetera.
Hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, for myself, I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. So I'm learning and growing in this too, you know. You know, as we mentioned, we got a couple different pandemics going on, a couple different situations. Parents are being teachers a little bit at home, or monitors, if you want to say. They're learning this technology is driving them crazy, and you're also trying to work. And so some things that I've tried to do is just be more mindful of taking my breaks when I can. um, I read my devotion every morning. Working on trying to incorporate some fitness because the quarantine, it wasn't so nice to me. I don't know
Some
what happened,
quarantine
but
15.
yeah, the quarantine 15 wasn't so nice to me. So that is a goal of mine. I did a vision board, you know, still being hopeful of things to look forward to within these next few years. And then just honestly being appreciative for the time that you do have, and recognizing the importance of taking breaks. So I'm not a movie watcher, I'm not a TV watcher, but I find myself sitting down a little bit more, put my feet up when I can, and trying to take that in. So those are some of the things that I've done. Um,
Okay, good. We have another question for you, Katrina. The question is what has been one of the more challenging or most challenging experiences you've encountered during the pandemic?
oh, so for me, during the pandemic, I think for me personally, I think just managing it all, just being honest, just doing your best to manage all that you have coming your way, whether it's, you know, work, um, you know, making sure your family is healthy, um, just staying on top of bills, staying on top of everything. I'm okay, you know, but I think just managing it all, and also, you know, with the school, learn. I don't have an iPhone. I do, but I don't know how to work it. But these kids know how to work these iPads and these, you know, these tablets. I don't know what I'm doing. So it seriously, it'll give me a headache. So, you know, I think that was probably my most challenging part of the pandemic. But one thing it taught me is that you can do it. You know, you can do it. You have to sit down for a minute. You might have to learn a new skill, but you can do it and you can manage. And it's okay to ask for help. Um, when you need it. So that's probably personally more challenging, but also professionally, because you're stretched. You know, you find your team stretched a little bit with all that you have going on to support those who are working the front line. So, you know, helping to onboard new people to the system, and just making sure that they have everything they need so they can be successful. Um, those are some of the things that I found a little challenging.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of air break. During the pandemic, and I know that Dominique is newly walking into the educational arena from the HR arena into the educational arena, but have you ever experienced where a parent or anyone has berated you? And how did you deal with that? And what happened? What did you do to calm them down? Assuming you were able to calm them down. I'm going
Yeah,
to ask you
so
to address that.
yeah, no, so I think it's a great question. And I think kind of going back to what Katrina said, everybody's overwhelmed, right? Overwhelmed, stretched thin. So there's absolutely been parents that are angry, upset. They don't know or understand why their daughter got these marks. And, you know, maybe they're not understanding the concept, and that's my fault. So, you know, generally those things come in through email. And when they come in through email, I do not answer them right away. Right. So I let it simmer for a little while because it's at the height of what you feel. Right. So I just updated that grade. Now you're pushing out this message, you're attacking me, and we haven't had a conversation. Right. So there's no accountability from the child's perspective. You and I don't have that connection, in that you don't know what type of support or what type of options that child has one way or the other. Generally, when they come through, I take them offline. We will schedule a time to chat so that we can understand, see each other, because when you see me, it is a totally different tone. Right. And now we can really put all of our cards on the table, and I can better understand what you need from me and how I can assist you. So, you know, kind of going back to what I said in regards to what people can do to support educators, for me as an educator, as a parent, what I can do is extend grace. And in that moment, it is about extending grace. Hey, I understand, right? I'm a parent too. So I too am getting it from all angles, and I'm in this space of uncertainty, and I'm just trying to make the best of a crummy situation. But together, right, we can make this thing go further. If we're being combative in this space, if you and I aren't seeing eye to eye, it's not going to help Susie. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help me. Right. So what can we do, right? Instead of coming from a place of, you know, accusations and attacking, but what can we do together to make sure that there's a better understanding, there's better communication across the aisle, to to meet her needs, and to also make sure that she doesn't fall behind. So, you know, that's my approach. I generally am a hothead, right? So I generally will come back, but in this season, I'm learning that sometimes you
You
just gotta
couldn't
let
tell.
things simmer. You just gotta let it simmer, right? Because people get excited, and it's okay to be excited. I'm excited for you to be excited, and I'm glad that you're at least looking at the grade book to know what's going on. But let's look at this from a teamwork perspective, right? It's not about me. It's about us and how we can get to a better place together.
You are so absolutely right. So as we begin to wind this session down, I want to thank the both of you. I'm going to ask that each of you share one or two takeaways that our viewers can take with them into 21. It could be something that you've learned from your own personal experience in 2020 as you've been able to manage and also champion some of the experiences as our frontliners, our essential workers. And then from there, I am also, but before we do that, I do want to say, Susan, I don't want to ignore your message and what she's actually thanking both of you for the work that you do, and for everything that you're taking on our behalf. That's pretty phenomenal. So I'm going to ask you to give just a couple takeaways that our viewers can take with them into 21. And then I'm going to ask everyone to say hello, thank you, and goodbye. Let's start with you, Katrina.
All right. So a few takeaways for 2021, I would say, enjoy life, experience all that you can, even during this season. Make sure you let your loved ones know, especially if you haven't talked to them in a while. Reach back out. It's that time to make those connections. You know, be aware of your mental health, your physical health, emotional health, and do your best to make sure that you're healthy so that you can help others. And I think last, just find the gratitude in every day. Even though it might be hard, try to find it. It's somewhere, and it'll smile at you, and you'll know that's what it is.
Awesome. How about you,
Yeah.
Dominique?
Yeah, for me, I would say don't allow yourself to become numb to the
Hmm.
things that are happening around you, right? Stay involved, stay on top of, stay um, educated, right? And when you have questions, don't be afraid to ask questions and, meet people where they are, right? Really be able to extend that level of gratitude and grace to other people. The other thing that I would offer is that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Mm.
So if you are running ragged and you are doing all things and trying to be everything to everyone, then you have nothing left in the tank to give yourself, right? Really take a step back, take the opportunity to check in with you first and foremost, because we know that if you're not good for you, you can't be good for anybody else. So that's what I would say. Take up space for yourself. Make sure that you are giving yourself the time and the space that you need in order to process and to feel what you feel and be able to kind of navigate these challenging times and continue to stay involved, stay educated, have the tough conversations with your Black and brown counterparts, the people that are in your network, and really kind of check yourself, right? Are these the biases or unbiases that are coming up for me, and why so? Where is that coming from, and how can or what can I do in order to not allow that or to have that happen?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm taking all of this in. I appreciate you both. I appreciate all of the frontline essential workers that are out there and the families and friends that support them. But I also want to give an amazing thank you to Girls Night Live, because if it wasn't for platforms like this, who is in a position to elevate our voices, they would not be heard. They absolutely would not be heard to the
Sure.
among the masses. So I want to thank all the dynamic people associated with bringing Girls Night Live to us and bringing us to this platform. And congratulations on their 400th
Yeah.
episode.